You are listening to the Amber AF podcast. I'm probably going to spill some tea. Definitely going to talk a lot. So buckle in, have a seat, and let's get into it. Ooh. 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 Okay, I'm gonna stop. But you guessed it. Today's episode is scary AF. You know, it's funny. I actually have the capability of doing legit sound effects, but for some reason, like, I'm wanting to do them with my mouth. So here we are. But anyway, for those of you that don't know me, I am an avid fan of all things scary, all things that go bump in the night. And, you know, on this very special Halloween episode, we not only are going to talk about the fun things that entertain me when it comes to scary things, but I share some of my not so obvious phobias and some of my reoccurring nightmares that I have. If any of you guys are like dream specialists, maybe you can like write in and tell me what they mean. Maybe you're not a dream specialist, but you feel like writing in and telling me what it means. Cool. I'm here for the interpretations. But yeah, so let's just hop in. Okay, so I like to read books. I know a lot of you do. In terms of Halloween, one of my favorite things to do is reread it. To reread Storm of the Century. I actually have the screenplay of it. I don't know that they actually ever published that story as a book. It was a made-for-TV movie by Stephen King. And they, at one point, released the screenplay, so I bought that when I was, like, 12 maybe, and I read it, like, at least once a year. It's pretty good. It's actually one of my favorite scary stories. It's about a small town off the coast of Rhode Island, I believe, or Maine, one of the two. Stephen King loves that northeast area. But the story, without spoiling it, is basically that there's this super small town that is hunkering down for what they are deeming the storm of the century. And suddenly, before everything kind of goes into storm lockdown, this random stranger comes into town. Nobody knows him. He's a stranger, of course. And they keep him in the prison because someone gets murdered upon his arrival. They don't have evidence that it was him, but they're like, okay, well, we're a small town. We know everybody except you. We've got some questions. And over the course of the storm getting worse and worse, things become more sinister. And that's all I'll say about that. But definitely look that one up. It's really great. Let's see. Anything zombie related. I know zombies became super popular in the last 10 years, but I have to say, and this is not me being a hipster, but I do have to say that I have always been a huge fan of everything zombie. So much so that I want to say in 3rd or 4th grade, I wrote a short story series called Super Zombie. No, it didn't get published beyond me self-publishing the one copy. But Super Zombie is about, it's actually about a little girl. Well, let me go back because that's Super Zombie 2. So Super Zombie 1 is about a groundskeeper at a cemetery. He's a super sweet guy, loves his job, loves the fact that when he goes to the cemetery, he's usually doing groundskeeper work at night and it's very quiet and he loves it. Well, one day there is an asteroid, meteorite. I think I said it was a meteorite. A very large one that crashed down into the cemetery and gave off gamma and all kinds of radiation and stuff. And it caused the dead to rise. Now, the thing about that meteorite that hit, it actually hit and like smashed the groundskeeper, except because of the radiation, he absorbed all of the radiation. He died, but he too came back, but he was sentient. So he became super zombie because when he came to, he saw all of these ghouls coming from their graves to hit up the small town and like kill everybody. And so he then for 2 more books struggles to stop the zombie horde. But there is a little girl who happened to be like an outcast, whatever, and like she loved hanging out in the graveyard at night too. She just like hid from the groundskeeper because she just wanted to be alone. She was not too far from the radiation blast from the meteorite, and she too became a zombie, but sentient. So she ends up being his sidekick, and together they save the small town. But that's super zombie. And yeah, I was obsessed from a very early age. So in any case, Halloween time, to me, the best thing to do is to like actually read horror stories or play video games. So, well, you know, I'm going to save the video games for later on. Cause I've got some lists of those too, but yeah, dude, get your read on. Okay. So I wasn't really sure what stories to tell as it relates to Halloween. Do I tell my favorite Halloween story? Do I tell something scary that happened? I'm going to do a couple things. We can start with one of the things that scared the crap out of me as a kid. So back at my childhood elementary school, it was in the middle of a normal neighborhood, I suppose. And there was a park that we would walk to. We had like a playground and stuff at our school, but there was like a really killer park not too far, like maybe a couple blocks south of the school. So frequently, the different classes would walk to it. Maybe we'd have outdoor class or we would just have fun time at the park. And on the way to the park, there was this like kind of creepy, not Rambler style. I guess it was kind of like a cottage of sorts. I don't know. But it was painted like this brick red kind of, but it was also like a blood red. And it was wooden and it was quirky and the yard was pretty unkempt. And it just like had this really weird energy. And so like walking past that house always gave me the creeps as a kid. But then one of the older kids pulled me aside because like apparently he saw that I would like always kind of shudder every time we walked past it, and I would like walk really fast, and he'd be like, well, it's a good thing you're walking fast past it because the boogeyman lives there. And from then on, I was just like terrified. I would like hold the teacher's hand when we'd walk by. I was like, I don't like that house. I heard the boogeyman lives there. I don't like it. And as it turns out, the boogeyman didn't live there. It was like this sweet old man. I mean, like everybody has a story of like well, not everybody, but I'm sure a lot of us have stories of creepy houses or even people that we perceived as creepy, only to find out that they were like the sweetest humans. I mean, think about Home Alone when that happened. Like that homeless dude and that homeless woman, they were really cool. Also, side note, that's like a really messed up trope. And I shouldn't say homeless, I should say unhoused. Like, that is a messed up trope that in the Home Alone movies, the 2 people he was like most freaked out about were like old and presumably like unhoused. Like, maybe that says something about us. But anyway, so that was creepy. And tied into that same kid told me that the boogeyman over there would have like Frankenstein come over and like just a bunch of like Dracula would come hang out there sometimes, and they would all listen to Boogie Wonderland. So that song was ruined for me for like another 6 years until like the funk just took over, and I was like, oh, okay, well, it's so funky. Like, how could this possibly be scary? Whatever. So Let's see. Uh, More childhood things. So when I was a kid, my childhood house that I grew up in, it was built on like the parking lot of where a church used to be. So like the lot next door to us was the church, and then where our house was built, it was what the church parking lot used to be. And I don't know, like little noises here and there, I'd hear them and I'd be like, oh, it's definitely haunted. But at the same time, the house was a new build, and houses settle and they make noise. So like I kind of got to understand the difference of like what those sounds were. Well, there was one night where I woke up probably around 1 a.m. to the sound of just like nondescript chatter, but it sounded like it was in the living room, like there were people hanging out in the living room. And I got out of bed. My mom and dad got out of bed. We go to like the center part of the house, and we're all looking at each other like, y'all hear that? And like we all swear that we heard like congregation sounds. And yeah, to this day I still think that happened, but you know, whatever. I mean, it just sounded too real. It really did sound like, I mean, imagine waking up and you hear the sound of maybe 20 people's voices like right outside of your door. Not like, oh, maybe there was a window open in the kitchen or something. No, it wasn't like that. It was definitely like there's people in the house all talking. What in the world is happening? And it was loud enough to a point where like we all woke up and heard it. How bizarre, right? How bizarre. How bizarre. Anyway, let's see. So I'll probably do a whole episode about my take on the dream world and my practice of lucid dreaming. I have been practicing lucid dreaming since I was 7 or 8, and I started doing it because I had really bad night terrors. There would be times where I would wake up in the middle of the night screaming, and I would like run from my bedroom into a random part of the house, or my mom would find me in her closet sorting her clothes, sleepwalking. I don't think I sleepwalk anymore, but I live alone, so I don't know for sure. I don't think I do. But so all right. So in my travels of lucid dreaming, I um I remember my dreams really well. And so there are some nightmares that I have that are reoccurring, and have reoccurred since I was very little. Or like characters or creatures will appear in my dreams, even if it has nothing to do with like the original dream they came from. So at any given point in the year, I would say maybe 1 to 3 times a year, Chucky, like stabbing Chucky, will show up in my dreams unannounced, completely unrelated for no reason. The last dream that I had was I woke up from a nap on my couch. I hear it's raining, but I look outside. I see all my neighbors pointing like west of my house. I'm like, what are they pointing at? What's going on? What's outside? I look, there's a massive tornado, like not even F5. It's got to be like, if there were an F10 tornado, it was that. And it was like the next block over. And so I run into my house. I go to the crawl space underneath my stairs. I try and get in there, but there's a zillion boxes. So I'm sitting here trying to race this tornado, pull out all these boxes. Eventually, I pull them out just in the nick of time. I'm able to shut the door, and I hear the tornado come and like rip everything away, except for this like crawl space area that I'm in. Out of the corner of my eye, though, I see movement. I'm like, what is that? And I slowly look to my left, and there he is. There's Chucky with a big old butcher knife. Except I was like, oh no, not today, sir. We've been doing this for a good 25 years. I'm not having it. And so I grab his little legs. I open the crawl space door and I throw him into the tornado as it's like flying or twirling away. And Chucky went away. Yeah, but I say all that to say that, yes, I've used lucid dreaming as a way to actually cope with, like, nightmares and stuff like that. I'm able to if I'm having a dream that's a little bit too scary, I'm able to stop it in the middle and either change the dream or wake myself up or fly away. Um, and so, like, there's one reoccurring dream that started maybe in my 20s where it was kind of set in a land that was like Silent Hill, I guess. And it kind of looked like a video game in the sense that it was like bird's eye view. And it was like a side scroller, except I'm flying over this like creepy village and there's zombies below, but there's also Pyramid Head from Silent Hill that shows up. And I'm flying, but I can only fly just high enough where I'm just out of reach of their fingers. I can't go any higher than that. And if I don't keep focus on it, I fall down into a horde of zombies and really large Silent Hill monsters. And so I'm trying to fly out of this village. And so I'm flying through like barns and like through attic windows and random places like that. Um, and I don't know. I have no idea what this dream. Like I always get out, like by the like skin of my teeth. I always get out and then fly over this large body of water so they can't get to me. And the dream either it ends in two ways. It either ends where I fly over this large body of water and I end up in New York City, and then I'm just in New York City, and then it starts a whole other thing, or by the time I get to the other side of this body of water, it's the start of the village again. It's it's bizarre. I don't quite understand it. Um, but I recognize it's happening, and that's not really a dream that I like stop for some reason, but it is creepy. I don't like it. Um, there is another thing that happens. So I don't know if you're familiar with sleep paralysis, but um every now and I don't want to say I suffer from it. That's too strong a word. But every now and again, I will recognize it's happening. So when you get good at lucid dreaming, you start to see the signs that like you're actually asleep already, and they happen a lot sooner than you think. Um, and so there are times when I'll recognize I'm within sleep paralysis. But the scary part of that, at least for me, is when you recognize you're kind of between those realms in your brain, like the the way everything looks around you ends up being like sepia tone or um just like low contrast. And so like you see it and you're like, "Oh, hey, it's this time." And you can't move, but your brain's still working cuz you figured out a way to recognize that. Um the problem is your brain is trying to get you into dream mode, sleep mode. So you start to hear sounds. And it is the scariest thing when you are in that world and you don't recognize it as sleep paralysis. Oh, my brain is just on its way to sleep. To you, you're like, I'm laying here and I'm hearing these freaky sounds or I'm seeing these freaky shadows. Like it is not cool. It really does feel like haunted house vibes, like there is a presence there. But again, no, you just are awake in a interesting part of your sleep process. But I'll do that on another episode. But in any case, yeah, that is scary at times to where when I do wake up from that, I have to just get out of bed and start my day. I'm like, there's no going back. There is no going back from that part. Mm-mm, can't do it. I guess I haven't really had anything genuinely scary happen to me except and if I have, I must have blocked it out because I'm not able to quite remember them. But the things that scare me the most, I think, have more to do with like realistic threat. I was just telling a friend like being frightened in context like is totally fine to me, but having someone come up and scare you when that's not supposed to happen, terrifying. Hate it. So, speaking of being scared in context versus out of context, um, I love watching scary movies. I love playing scary video games, especially like survival horror. Those are the best. I love a good scary story. I love a good grave walk or like a haunted house or a haunted forest. Love those things. I don't like being scared out of context. So, like, if I'm showing up to visit you at your house and I knock on your door and then all of a sudden you're behind me and you like jump out of nowhere and scare me and go, and I go, I don't like those things. I end up getting small. And what I mean by that is I literally like concave into myself in those moments. um but anyway, so some of my favorite scary movies. So I mentioned Storm of the Century, that maybe being at the top. Honestly, I love most made for TV Stephen King movies like Rose Red, Thinner, um uh what was it? The Stand. I almost said The Crow, which is hilarious. No, The Stand. Um, love those movies. Um, I love the video game remakes of Resident Evil. I completely love them because I can separate the fact that, like, okay, they are inspired by, but not supposed to be exactly like the games. Um, Silent Hill is another one. I'm not a huge fan of Silent Hill 2. It's not great, in my opinion, but Silent Hill 1, loved that movie. Again, it's a scenario where it's not supposed to be exactly like the video game. It's supposed to be inspired by that universe. That being said, the Silent Hill movies really, really, I think, embodied those like that video game universe. Whether it was how they used the air horn to signalize or signalize, wow, symbolize that the characters in the movie are essentially moving to the next level of the game every time that happened. To just like the fact that they did a hybrid of like practical effects versus CGI. And so they actually had actors dressed up, not just with like the motion capture outfit, but they're actually dressed up in costume as these scary characters and bringing them to life. And for me, when I'm looking at scary movies and TV shows, I am kind of looking to see, okay, are they relying solely on CGI or do they have practical effects? Do they have actors and actresses that are able to bring these characters to life without the use of a computer or at least minimal use of a computer? If they are, I'm probably going to watch it. One of my favorite movies is called Suspiria. It's by this director Dario Argento. He's known for like really gory horror movies. It's Italian horror. But what makes it interesting is that like it's interesting in the way that The Fifth Element is interesting fashion wise. So he's an Italian horror movie director. So like he's also very influenced by like Italian fashion designers. And so the clothing and the set design kind of matches that aesthetic. But then the blood is like this like almost comical like cherry red, but he's known for that. So there was a remake of Suspiria that Chloe Grace Moretz is in, and it's on Amazon, I want to say. It is a terrifying remake, and honestly, definitely scarier than the first one. The first one I didn't see as scary. I just thought it was really cool. It was like scary in the sense of, oh, these are scary themes, but I didn't get scared. The remake, though, yikes, they went there. It is so dark. Suspiria is about a young American girl who decides to go to a dance academy in Italy. And it's run by these older women. But things start to get wonky. The day that she showed up, a girl was murdered or accidentally killed. Though, yeah, murdered. And so it just like was never normal. Like she got there and a girl was like trying to leave and like fell off of a balcony on accident. I put air quotes around that. So but that one's really good. Let's see. What else? Any of the classic horror films I love. I am a huge fan of George Romero. George Romero to me is George Romero is to horror genre films as Stan Lee is to the comic book world, in the sense of they took political commentary, they took social commentary and like interwove them into their storylines. So like with X-Men, you've got the idea of mutants being the ostracized group of people in the world. And like there's like a Jim Crow for mutants basically happening. And then you've got the idea that Charles Xavier is like the Martin Luther King, and Magneto is like either the Malcolm X or the Marcus Garvey of the movement. They both want the same thing for their people, but one is choosing violence and one is choosing like let's make changes in the government to help us, whatever. So in that way, that whole world is an allegory. George Romero was really good at centering Black and brown voices in his stories back when movies were in black and white. In fact, I want to say his original Night of the Living Dead might have been one of the first, if not like the first horror film to center a black male protagonist, who ends up slapping the white female lead, which I don't condone men hitting women, but like if you saw the movie, I'm not gonna say she deserved it, but she might have deserved it. But it was fiction, so it's okay to say that. I don't. Yikes. Oh, well. In any case, that movie was so groundbreaking in so many different ways, but I think the ending, being a tragedy, was perfect and actually realistic. The police show up and like mow down all of these zombies that are like surrounding this house. And the black guy runs outside and with his hands up being like, "Thank you, you saved us." And they shoot him because even back then. So ahead of its time in a lot of ways, let's be real. Like we all get on Lena Waithe for like making her movies end tragically in that kind of way for our black protagonists. But like that ain't new. George Romero did it first. And yes, I this is the whole conversation of like black trauma on film and whatnot. Maybe for a different time, I'm not really sure, but I think that there's a context for everything. But you can't have a Lena Waithe without a George Romero, period. Like that's just the case. That's what it is, in my opinion. Some of my favorite scary video games. So Alan Wake is a video game. It's survival horror. And it centers around a guy who is a horror author. He's kind of like the Stephen King of this fictional universe. And his wife decides that they should do a getaway to a remote island so that he can finish his books, because he's had like a bad case of writer's block. And so they go to this town. It's tiny. Everyone's a little bit off, but like not so off that they're like, let's pick another town, but just like a little bit off. Their house, it's not at the lighthouse, but it is on like a peninsula on this island or whatever. So like they have one night there and there's a storm or something, but Alan wakes up and his wife is gone, like missing, can't find her anywhere. And all of a sudden people are taken over by this like darkness that like possesses them, and the only way for him to get rid of them or kill them, depending on what the scenario is he has to shine his flashlight and then use bullets. So in most games, your character is running around looking for like ammunition. In this game, not only are you looking for ammunition, but you're looking for batteries for your flashlight, because your gun is rendered useless if you don't have a flashlight with it. It's crazy. But what I love about the game is that they actually set each chapter up as a TV episode. And so when you finish it and you start a new chapter, it's all like previously on Alan Wake. And then they like do the recap of what you just did. Or like they'll show like a preview of what's going to happen next, like it's a TV show. So when I played it, I wanted to stretch it out as long as I could. That's what she said. So so I played it like once a week. So I played one chapter every like Wednesday afternoon and got through the chapter. And I was like, oh, wow, that's good. Okay, see you next week. As if it were airing. I don't know. That was always fun. But I've had nightmares from that game, and most video games don't give me nightmares, but that one was one of them. So they did a really great job. Similarly, the whole Resident Evil series, but especially the latest Resident Evil editions. So the last Resident Evil that I've officially played was it The Village? No, this last one was called Village. I can't remember what the one was right before this recent one. That one was really good. You can tell that they considered making it for VR, just because of how dynamic the visuals are. Like in the first 2 minutes, someone stabs your hand off, and like it really does look like it's coming through the screen. It's wild. Like I said, the Silent Hill games, I love those. They're gorgeous. And what's cool about a lot of survival horror games that I don't think people realize is that a lot of times they're heavily reliant on puzzles. And who doesn't love a good old puzzle? As you know, you might be like being chased by monsters and stuff. Sounds like fun to me. Sign me up. So yeah, speaking of being chased by monsters, so I have always loved the show Buffy. I'm probably going to mention Buffy 80 more times in the, duration of me doing these podcasts. Probably will. And sometimes, like, if I go through a haunted house, I say to myself, okay, but like if Buffy were going through this haunted house, like she would not be scared. So buck up. What are you doing? Yeah. But like sometimes in my scary dreams that I'll have, I'll when I realize it's a scary dream, I'll like pretend to myself that I'm Buffy and that I have all her superpowers. It's a lot of fun. Um, I don't know. I'm a weirdo like that. I bring up Buffy to say that that was also a very well done action horror video game. I think it's like rare now too. Like I have a copy of it. I don't know how many people have copies. I'm sure thousands, but it's definitely one of those things where at random times, if you go on like eBay and try and buy it, someone's selling it for like $100. And this game came out back when like PS2 was still issuing game discs for things. So you can do the math there. Phobia wise, so a lot of my phobias that I deem phobias didn't really develop until my mid to late 20s, I would have to say. I have a lot of trouble going down spiral staircases, especially if they're steep. Like the steeper they are or the more narrow they are, the more of a challenge it is for me. I'm like clinging on to the railings because I don't want to fall. I don't know. I just like I get nervous. I don't know that I get vertigo per se, but like it's not easy. I can tell you that much. Same thing with like just steep, narrow staircases. Especially like in old buildings, I'd find myself like missing a stair and like tripping or whatever. And I trip down the stairs anyway. So then you add a narrow staircase to it, and I'm just like, what the what? No, no, I really don't like them. I also really don't like bridges, and I don't know, someone probably should psychoanalyze me about that too. I've had so many nightmares of like being in a band van and like driving somewhere in South Carolina or Florida where there's tons of like bridges that go over massive lakes or whatever. And I have these dreams where like the bridges just get more narrow and narrow and narrow until either the vehicle flies off the bridge or the vehicle goes into the water. Either way, not a huge fan of those bridges. They give me the Wiggins. Let's see, what else? When I was a kid, I did not want to touch raw meat. It was like it was gross, and I didn't want to get it under my nails, and it was a whole thing. Like I would not touch it. But I think getting older and realizing I have to cook for myself, eventually I bit the bullet. Like I wore gloves for a really long time whenever I would prepare any kind of meat because I didn't want any of the salmonella. I didn't. I also was a stickler about people closing toilet lids when they flushed because I was like gravely concerned that I would get poop particles in whatever on me, like on my toothbrush, whatever. That was something that really, really bugged me and freaked me out enough to where I would like make sure people were doing it. The adult Amber version of that now is I really don't like like okay, if I go into the bathroom, whether it's like somebody's house or in a public restroom, sorry, it's making me gag. Or there's a couple things making me gag about what I'm about to say. So the first thing is I don't like peeing on top of somebody else's pee. I don't know if it's like a primal thing or what, but like if somebody else's pee is in the toilet bowl, I have to flush it before I pee. Like I'm not peeing on top of that. I don't like the idea of my pee mixing with somebody else's pee. I've said pee a lot. Sorry. Ew. The other thing, and this is going to maybe make me sound bougie or sensible. Hopefully to you, it's sensible. One-ply toilet paper makes me gag. And I'm not saying that like, oh, gag me with a spoon, you know, shout out to Cher Horowitz. But no, I mean like, especially in a public restroom, there's something about one-ply toilet paper in a public restroom, specifically in the South, that as soon as I see it and or touch it, I am trying not to throw up in my mouth. This is a real thing. It developed probably about 4 years ago, but ever since I just can't do it. Yuck. Gross. Okay, so another thing that maybe might be like an irrational fear of mine is that somebody might be living in my ceiling. The house that I bought sat vacant for, I guess, 4 years before I bought it. Maybe a little bit less than that. And every once in a while, I think like, okay, I know I didn't eat this entire loaf of bread by myself. The reality is I did. But I think to myself, I didn't eat this entire loaf of bread. I live alone. How come this bread is like gone at this point? Or man, you know, I can't find this pair of underwear or this underwear or whatever, like just like random things. Or man, I'm missing one too many batteries. There's no way I've gone through this many batteries in a month. There's just no way. And I'm just like a little bit concerned, even as I say this, that there is like some like maybe little old lady living in my wall or crawl space. And I think that has to do with some horror movie I saw when I was a kid. I don't know if I don't think it was When a Stranger Calls, but maybe it was. My mom listens to all these episodes despite my warning of, hey, maybe you shouldn't. She listens to these though, so she'll know what I'm talking about. But there's the scene in this movie where like, okay, so there's a lady, she's got an apartment in New York City. Surprise, it's the 90s. And I want to say there's a stalker, and I want to say at one point he painted himself to look like her brick wall and sat there in the living room watching her until he was ready to strike. Like, I think that fear definitely stems from me seeing that at a very early age. And thanks, Mom. Appreciate you for that. But it was kind of funny because there was probably maybe it was like 5 years ago at this point, but there was an incident where I'm sitting in my bed. It's probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And all of a sudden I just hear this loud scratching and kind of some kicks and bangs, not like super loud bangs like someone's kicking the door in, but maybe somebody is like trying to pick my lock. And I freak out. Who do I call? Beep boop bop boop beep boop bop. My mom. Of course. I'm like, I think someone's trying to get in the house. Oh my God, I hear them. They're so close. They're loud. I've locked my bedroom door. I am under my bed. And I'm on the phone with my mom. I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I call the police? I don't have a gun. I don't have anything. I'm scared. Oh my God. And then the longer I listened to it and heard the movements, I realized there's not a person either trying to get in or an additional person in this house. No, there's got to be something in my crawl space, which then leads me to, oh God, what is in my crawl space? Oh no. So, eventually, I get some guys to come trap or whatever. And that's all well and good, but I end up having this issue for probably a couple more years following. I haven't really had that issue in the last 2 years, but yeah, like that was freaky, but it got freakier. So one day I'm in my kitchen and I'm baking chicken and like meal prepping and all kinds of stuff. And I hear a little bit of scratching once the chicken's almost done. And I look up and there is a paw, but like a possum paw, which if you've seen a possum paw, they're creepy. They are lanky. They have nails, like scratchy, scary nails, just poking through my ceiling. Of course, I scream. I happen to have my phone in my hand and I run out the front door because I'm like, it's your house now. Clearly, it's not my house. Nay. Shout out to Bailey Sarian. So, I then call like the non-emergency line and they send a fire truck and like 6 guys and they come to my house and I point to where this like possum thing is. And they're like, well, ma'am, unfortunately, because it's between your crawl space and your ceiling, so it's like basically in no man's land, we can't help you. The only thing we can do is like put some like sheet metal over this hole it punched so it can't come back down. But after that, you're going to have to call trappers again. So I ended up having to call trappers. Yeah, like that's like that real life stuff that, especially if it hits your wallet, which it absolutely did, by the way, because calling trappers aren't cheap. And I am slightly convinced that some of these trappers aren't letting these creatures go far enough from your house, so they end up coming back. Side note, the other thing to know is that when you have creatures that live in your crawl space for any extended period of time, beyond just like getting rid of the creatures themselves and maybe patching the holes, it's advisable to also replace your insulation because they leave their scent and it's kind of like a homing beacon for said animals. So, they're kind of like the Michael Myers of house pests, I would guess. Shout out to Starbucks. Anyway, so, I wanted to go back to a couple video games though. So there's Max Payne. So it's interesting because Max Payne isn't quite survival horror. Well, it started that way because he had these like crazy flashbacks and like people were on drugs that he was like fighting, but they were on these drugs. It was like called Valkyr. And it was like this game's version of heroin, except it gave you like crazy like meta superpower things or whatever. And he also would like hallucinate and all of this stuff in trying to find his family. But that whole trilogy, Max Payne, epic. Another one that actually shaped was a big part in shaping my love for video games, and specifically my love for horror video games that are like puzzle based even. And it's called Killing Time by, was it 3DO Studios? Yeah, I think it was 3DO. But my mom and I found it in like a $5 bin for PC. This had to be in the early 90s, like 95, 96. We found it in like a $5 bin at like Circuit City, just so I can age this a little bit more. And we brought it home and we played it. And listen, if you go on YouTube and you look up the the playthroughs of it, because the game in reality probably actually doesn't take that long to play now that we have like more advanced technology and stuff. If someone like me now went back and played that game, I could probably beat it in an hour. But back then we would play it for days. And we would get the cheat codes and so we could have all the weapons, because ew, no weapons is the ghetto. So my mom and I would like sit and play this game all the time, like just sit together and we'd take turns and stuff. And like, that was just so much fun. Like it was set, I want to say, I don't remember the years that the Art Deco thing was popular. I guess like the 20s, maybe. But it was on this island owned by this Gatsby-esque person. And they were obsessed with like Egyptian culture and like different religious aspects from like Egyptian culture. Because back then, I want to say that was a huge thing. Like people, colonizers, hello, but they were like going through and raiding tombs and all that kind of stuff. Like, and so like in rich white society, a lot of people also really dug that aesthetic, which is why if you look at Art Deco art and stuff, by the way, you might see a lot of like lotus flower things. Actually, if you look at the aesthetic that's in Cheesecake Factory, like on their ceilings and stuff, and even on the outside, that's like very similar to some of the vibes that like people liked back then. And so in this game, everything was kind of based off of that. But what happened was they were messing around with powers they didn't understand, and they cursed the entire island. And so this person, the protagonist, the person you play, ends up on this island and has to find, I don't even remember what he has to find, canopic jars or something, I'm not really sure, to like release the spirits so that everything can go back to normal or whatever. But man, was that a fun game. It was, I feel like the story that they created with the like cutscenes, which again, you look back now, it's like very rudimentary, but because they actually, I want to say the cutscenes were actual video clips. So this was a time when like the rendering process of like CGI and whatnot in video games especially was like very rudimentary. And I am assuming it was a lot easier to just like insert video clips where there's a cutscene, and then once that's over, the loading, I don't know if the loading screen happened before. I think the loading screen was happening during the cutscene video, like behind it. It was wild. But yeah, dude, like on my Sony Vaio, or I don't know, we had a Sony Vaio and we had something else. Anyway, it's a tangent for another time too. But that game was a really huge part of my childhood. Be disturbed about it if you want. I don't know. I don't really know. But yeah, so another irrational-ish fear that I have currently is that if I were to do something like 23andMe, that once I give my DNA sample, they will use it to clone me. And then my clone, amongst all the other clones, will come try and find me and eliminate me. by any means necessary. And like, I don't know, like I'm savage or whatever, but I'm not that kind of savage. Like I'm not going to sit here and like slit my own throat. Like what is that? Eek. But I don't know. So I really want to get like an ancestry thing done, but I'm honestly genuinely concerned. And really I'm genuinely concerned about like the things that I've said yes to. Now listen, I'm not one of the folks online being like, oh, by getting a vaccine or doing whatever, that the government will now be able to track me. That's not the conversation I'm having, because the reality is you are listening to this probably on a phone or on a computer or some device that, by the very nature of you owning and signing on to the internet, you are being tracked now and forevermore, period. So like, I get that. And to a certain extent, especially with how sick I've been with Crohn's disease over the years, my DNA is probably floating all over the place. And, you know, the fact that I can't get somebody else pregnant is like literally the only reason why I'm not seeing my DNA everywhere else. Thank God. But yeah, I don't know. Well, let me know if you think I should do 23andMe. I'm curious because, well, nope, that's another conversation. See, I have to stop myself here because as y'all are coming to realize, not only do I have a lot to talk about, but I go off on tangents quite a bit. Because to me, everything leads to everything leads to everything. I'm sorry. A little bit. But if anything, like I said, and I'll say it a zillion more times, I love scary stuff. I like scary adjacent stuff. I like things that are in the context of scariness. So actually, I guess 2 weekends ago, a friend took me out to Miller's Thrillers, which is like the haunted forest here in Tennessee. The haunted forest here in Tennessee. No, but yes, we went there. And we did like the zombie paintball hayride. And that was we did that first and then we did the haunted forest. The hayride was actually a lot of fun. They give you these paintballs to put in your gun, which is it's stationary, but you can move it left, right, and up and down. You just can't like take it off of the side of the tractor that you're sitting in. And so you go through the forest and these zombies, which are actors dressed up like zombies with helmets on, they come out of the forest, and then you got to shoot them, and they encourage you to shoot them in the head multiple times. I was a little concerned at first because I was like, listen, I've been shot with a paintball. Not too much though, because I am slick with it. But the times I have been shot with a paintball, it didn't feel good. So like, I was concerned, but they were like, yeah, no. Like in a zombie apocalypse, it's a double tap. You can't just shoot a zombie once and think they're done, because they aren't. Trust me. So did that, and it was a good old time. I am a pretty good markswoman, I have to say. Got through the forest, saved the world. It was super great. And then after that, we went to the haunted forest side of things. And if anybody is here listening, living in Tennessee, and I'm sure these rules or suggestions apply to any kind of like haunted experience you might go to, but I recommend getting there like when we did, which was around dusk, like right before the sun went down, because the lines weren't super long. But that being said, one negative side of haunted woods, forests, houses, whatever, is that if it's like, I think the closer you get to Halloween, the less of a scary experience it becomes and more of like a group experience, which is still fun. It's just different. So like when we went, we didn't have a ton of people with us, but there were enough to where there were times where like we were just stopped. Because So, I don't know, some dude in front of us like took it upon himself to uh, stop his group so that the other group in front of him could get through and then go, which, okay, I get it. I see what he was trying to do. It makes total sense, except your group isn't the last group here. Your group isn't the only group here, which means by you stopping, you are now pushing everyone back. And so everyone's just standing there, which is also kind of terrifying because at Miller's Thrillers, while they may not touch you, although a couple of them touched me and I had to, hold back. But for the most part, they're not touching you, but there are characters that will follow you. Like, I had one creepy girl follow me for like a whole scene and a half where like she was overtly following me, and then I'd look up and I'd see her like in another prop staring at me, and then she'd like be right behind me again, or I'd feel like a tug at my jacket. And then I'd look and it was her. I'm like, we aren't doing this today, little miss. No. But overall, it was a good time. They had really good chili fries. I don't even eat chili fries, but I got them that night and they were very good. So yeah, I'm down for the scary in context. Scary out of context things are like real life things, like me walking to my car and some like creepy rando dude follows me to my car and then proceeds to try and ask me for my number. Once I've shut the door, I get in my car, I look up, he's like at my windshield or my window, knocking on it, being like, "Hey, can I get your number? Hey, can I get your number?" And I'm just like, "No, please move." And he's like got his hand on my door handle trying to open the door. And I'm just like, "Sir, you need to back up because I'm literally about to back my car out and I don't want to run you over." And he kept his hand there, and it wasn't until I put the car in reverse and slightly like tapped the gas that he like backed up. But like, yeah, that kind of thing is petrifying. So anybody who like has those creepy vibes, I just want to let you know, like, don't do it. If you want a shot with whoever you're trying to holler at, don't do that. Because you're either going to be run over or like cops are called or both. I don't know. Yeah, just that kind of thing creeps me out. So speaking of things that creep me out, I thought it would be cool for me to like tell you what I deem the hallmarks of a good scary movie, TV show, video game, book. Okay. So one thing that makes things scary are actually very familiar settings. So something that seems mundane, normal, like all things considered, it could just be a normal TV show or movie about just like whoever. It could be a rom-com. But then there's something slightly off kilter, something that raises your awareness as the viewer, but not so much hitting you over the head with it. And then maybe like I really like the scary movies that play around with color. Movies that are using color palettes to really set the tone for what's going on. I don't know that I want a movie to like go into black and white when something scary is happening or whatever. Although that does help. One of my favorite episodes of The Walking Dead, for instance, which I'm sure is favorite for a lot of people, is I want to say it's season 2, episode 1. When they premiered it, that episode premiered in black and white. And it was like, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but at the same time, in the first few seasons of The Walking Dead, I will say it was groundbreaking for horror TV shows on TV. We actually didn't have a lot of those back then. And when we did, what we did have, it was just, Wasn't great. But the cinematography in season 2, episode 1, to me still goes down in history for me. And partially because they made the decision to give that throwback to George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, where it's all in black and white. And you're like holding your breath. You know, season 2 of The Walking Dead, they all now know that, yeah, this whole world is like that. Like everybody, like everything's turned into zombies. I don't think they have figured out yet that if you die of natural causes, you still become a zombie, but definitely that zombies are everywhere. There's really not a safe haven. And they haven't yet discovered that zombies can like go move in herds. And so this is the first time they encounter a herd, and it's on the freeway, and like people are like jumping on top of like RVs, holding their arms to their sides with the hope that like this herd will pass. Little Sophia goes missing. Carl's trying to be a little bit more assertive in trying to be helpful, even though he's still a kid. Lori and Shane have to stop fooling around because Rick is back. Let's see. I mean, there's so much happening. And I think with that said, it's like depending on if it's an ensemble cast or it's maybe like 1 to 2 main characters that you're following. To me, the larger the ensemble, the more difficult it becomes to like really create horror. It becomes more like a soap opera where there's like 12 storylines going on, and you can really only dedicate in a 30-minute episode or maybe an hour-long episode, you can maybe dedicate 10 minutes to each thing, maybe. And so it starts to move really, really slowly. And on TV shows in particular, I'm not a huge fan of that, but at least for the first 5 seasons of The Walking Dead, I felt like they did a really good job with that. But yeah, anyway, season 2, episode 1, Walking Dead, is up there for me. The episode Hush of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I want to say won an Emmy. That is an iconic horror TV episode, simply because after the first maybe 3 minutes of that episode, nobody talks at all. It's like a silent movie. So what happens in Sunnydale is, what seems to happen in Sunnydale is that everybody wakes up and everyone's voices are gone. It's like Ursula showed up and like snatched everyone's voices. But yeah, like literally every person in town, not just Buffy and the Scoobies, but like literally everybody in town cannot speak. And so it feels kind of doomsday-ish, because imagine if we all woke up and COVID actually was something that made it to where we couldn't speak at all. Like, we all take for granted the fact that, okay, aside from the fact that this virus is killing people, I don't want to like, make light of it. All I'm saying is like, man, we're lucky that with the senses that we lost, it wasn't like sight or hearing. Like, people were losing their sense of smell and taste, but not the other kind of stuff. And so, yeah, just imagine if on top of losing your smell or your taste, you also can't talk. It's not like I can't talk. It's like nothing's coming out, period. And so this whole episode, Buffy and her friends are trying to figure out what happened. All the while, these creepy looking, they're kind of like Slender Man, but also they look like vampires, but also they look like aliens dressed in 3-piece suits. And they don't walk, they just glide. And they've got pointy teeth and long fingers. And they show up to Sunnydale. And what they're doing is they're harvesting organs from people. So they are able to like do this spell on the town to where no one can speak, so that when they come in and harvest these random organs from random people, they can't scream. Nobody can scream. Nobody can be heard. And so eventually the way that it works, or they fix it, is that Buffy Buffy lures them into like this clock tower, and then like I want to say she rang a clock tower bell, and or no. Well, she rang the bell and it like hurt their ears, but it didn't kill them. And then she saw the box that they had enchanted that was like housing everybody's voices. And so she gets the box, smashes the box, she gets her voice back, and she screams, and then their heads explode. Still a really great episode. I'm probably not doing it justice by explaining it. But what did I like about that episode? There was action. There was a point of a sense of bringing everybody, including the viewer, in on this this issue or this problem. Like every single person in Sunnydale can't speak, including the Slayer. So as a viewer, you too are kind of like in that mind frame of like, oh my God, our voices are gone. Like they just did a really good job of that. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, the real scary things, aside from things that seem like they could actually happen. Actually, yeah. So I know that it's been a source of debate, especially on like Black Twitter, of trauma porn, specifically Black trauma porn. I'm not a big fan of the trauma genre per se. However, I feel like the ones that are receiving the most flack as of right now are actually not deserving of said flack. I watched all of the series Them on Amazon Prime. I want to say it's like Little Marvin and Lena Waithe partnered up for this. And yeah, there were some extremely triggering and disturbing scenes of which I'm not even going to describe here because I can genuinely say it was disturbing. And it was such a disturbing series that I started watching it like at, 1 a.m. one morning. And it was so disturbing by episode 3 that I was like, the sun's not up yet. I literally can't go to sleep. And I might as well just finish this and stay awake until the sun comes up because this is terrifying. What was so terrifying about it was that it's historical fiction. And the show itself is set, I want to say, in Compton, back when like redlining made Compton like pretty white back then. And so this Black family moves there from, Chicago, maybe. The dad is like a chemist or something like that. Or a mathematician. I can't quite remember. But yeah, they move there. He has a new job that was paying for where he's living. And they get to the neighborhood and it's a whole bunch of white folk that do not want them there. The show is called Them. And so they proceed to start doing sinister things to try and intimidate this Black family from staying there any longer. And it just gets worse and worse. And then all of a sudden it's like, is it the neighbors doing this or is this place haunted? What is happening? And the thing about it is I actually thought they did a brilliant job of like putting you in that era and creating characters that you love and root for and creating characters that you absolutely despise. And bringing depth to those, because there are some shows or movies that could be considered like trauma porn that don't actually give depth to to their racists. Like, I want my racists to have depth. I know that sounds silly or weird or like, how could that be? But hear me out. So you've got some movies where the racist antagonist is like so stereotypically racist or evil. but that's just like comical. And by doing that, to me, that's more harmful because now you're making light of the fact that there are people in this world that either A, are that racist and evil, or B, there are elderly people in this world, and people don't want to talk about that, that were alive when they were sticking fire hoses and dogs on marchers, protesters. They were alive when the Tulsa massacre happened. They were and participated. They were alive when the 4 little girls in Alabama were blown up in a church. Like, these people are still alive, right? Like, but nobody wants to talk about that. Well, some people want to talk about that, but there are certain people who are doing their best to try and pull that out of history books. I'm not even, you know what? I didn't mean to go into CRT, but you know what? To that point, it is a scary thing to like be in this in-between time where, okay, the dust has settled enough from certain things. Other things have been brought to light, and now there's another awakening. I feel like our collective consciousness goes in and out of being awake, not woke, but being awake. And I think we're awake right now, and we're in that in-between time where you've got people that want to restructure or rewrite or redact parts of history so that their, youth, as they're coming up, don't look back and say, oh my God, my grandma who is still alive participated in this thing. And the scariest part of that is, okay, we remove that. And as we all know, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Sounds scary to me. I'm really not interested in regressing. I'm really not. But back to them, the show. The reason why I thought it was profound in how that they wrote their characters and whatever is actually because they gave them a depth that is actually more realistic than that caricature racist kind of character that you see all the time. It was a lot of subtle things. There were a lot of, even just in the way people looked at this family in the most subtle way. Like, I watched it and was like, I have literally been looked at exactly like this. This is terrifying. That's what had me messed up when I watched it. Even as a homeowner. So like one of the things with like redlining and whatnot is it was a way to segregate, like legally segregate neighborhoods. I want to say in their HOA bylaws for a long time, they didn't want people of color in their kind of like HOA limits. And so, yeah, like, I don't know, just thinking about the fact that, like, I'm not going to lie, like, I don't know if she did this on purpose, but I know my realtor that I was using at the time, like, didn't show me any properties in the, I mean, I will just say it, like, in the white parts of town. She only showed me properties where there were mostly black and brown people. Now, like, I'm not saying I didn't want to live where I live now, but I'm just saying, like, man, it would have been cool to, like, see some other options elsewhere. So, like, stuff like that is still prevalent. But that, again, that's why something like them, I actually think is important, because it really does peel back the lens of, like, hey, you want to know why this is scary? Because it's familiar. Yeah. Again, when I say I like being scared in context, like I like being scared in context, but I am terrified when it's out of context. Seeing aliens or zombies or whatever to me sounds like fun, but seeing a sinister racist and or pair it with some sinister racist ghosts from way back in the way back. Ugh, frightening. Okay, so this episode comes out the Friday of Halloween. right? And I know for me, I don't really, if I really think about it, there weren't too many Halloweens that were standouts per se. Halloween in Minnesota was a mixed bag because anybody who knows Minnesota climate knows that really winter can start anywhere between September 1st and really September. Like September is not out of the question that like, oh, yep, there's a snowstorm, everything's canceled. So there were a lot of Halloweens where it was just simply too cold to actually trick or treat in your costume. Like you're wearing your costume, but it's underneath a puffer jacket and potentially snow pants. So essentially you're not wearing a costume. And then as I've talked about before, like as I got older, I wasn't super social per se. I remember going to a few Halloween parties when I was a teenager, but it wasn't any like crazy shenanigans. Not really. There was one basement party where like people were hooking up and I was just like there like playing foosball by myself. I was that kid. And yeah, but then college rolls around. I would say my first couple Halloweens in Boston while I was in college was pretty lit. One year I was like a superhero Bond girl thing. I painted my body in gold. I put on like a black dress that I already had and I just went and got a mask and I spray painted my hair gold too. And then I got like little rubber, like black gloves or whatever, leather gloves. And that was a costume. And this year, I don't want to spoil it because it's a surprise. It's a group costume with the Moon Taxi guys. So that should be fun and hilarious. I hope y'all dig it. I will post pictures on my Instagram for sure. But, you know, there was something about Boston Halloween days because in Boston, it was mostly warm enough to like be out and about and get into some shenanigans. So I do remember going to like a bunch of house parties, and just like being a nerd there. I think I maybe made out with a guy at a Halloween party one time, but then he started to get like kind of handsy and I was like, oh, nope, I'm not into this. Just kidding. And I left that party shortly thereafter. Yeah. But anyway, that being said, I've seen a lot of interesting costumes over the years, especially going to college in Boston and then moving to Nashville, which is low key, like definitely a party town as well. And I've seen my fair share of blackface. I've seen my fair share of indigenous people face. I don't know how you say that, but I've just seen my fair share of like racist costumes that go beyond even cultural appropriation. And I just want to say to you, if you're thinking, you know, I really love Sam Jackson in The Avengers and I want to be him and I'm a white man, that's totally fine. You can totally be him. Just don't paint your skin black. Also, be careful in doing any impressions of him unless you're like someone who does impressions and you know how to like specifically do Sam Jackson. Because I feel like a lot of people who aren't black or pick whatever race of character that this person is trying to imitate, a lot of times they will just do what they deem a black voice. And they'll be like, oh, see, I'm doing my Sam Jackson because I'm doing this horribly offensive, what I assume black vernacular is, which that's a whole other thing to talk about for another time. But like, can we normalize black people speaking however they want, whether it's speaking with kind of like, I don't even want to call it an American diction or any, but there is black vernacular. Okay. if we think back to like slavery and stuff like that, like there is a type of language that has been kind of like born from these cultures mixing throughout the African diaspora. And so there was like a vernacular that like slaves used and newly freed slaves used and all of that kind of stuff. And I feel like by us being like, oh, that's Ebonics, and then like shitting on people for speaking that way, I actually don't think that that's cool, because that is this like Eurocentric thing that it really has nothing to do with the level of intelligence a person has. Just because it doesn't fit into someone's box of what intelligence is supposed to sound or look like. But anyway, it's important to say that because, again, if you are dressing up as some other character from another race, do not feel the need to do an impression if it's not informed. And really, that probably will go for 99.99% of anyone wearing any costume that is portraying somebody else. Maybe save the impression, because I guarantee you, most of you aren't good enough to do it. It's just going to come off offensive, and I'm warning you now because, like, I'm trying to help you. This is an informative podcast, just as it is a funny one, just as it is my personal diary. But I'm just letting you know. You know what? Do what you want. But I'm just saying, you go into a certain part of town, sounding and dressing that way, I don't think you'll leave that part of town. And if you will leave with your tail between your legs. I'm just saying. There was one Halloween. I saw a show at Cannery Ballroom, and I was dressed as Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I had like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer wig. I did the which outfit? I did the like black leather jacket, black crop top tank, and then the red leather pants, and then the boots, and then I made a steak and all of that. And so that was me. And then there was somebody in the like VIP pit who was dressed as Dennis Rodman in the wedding dress, like the iconic like thing that he wore that one time. And this dude was a white guy, and he like painted himself black. And I just went up to him and was like, hey, so who are you supposed to be? I knew who he was supposed to be, but I want to mess with him. I was like, who is that? And he was like, I'm Dennis Rodman. And I was like, oh, really? Because I'm Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I didn't feel the need to paint my skin to be this character. So, like, what was the motive behind the paint? Is this an artistic choice? What are we going for here? And then he was just like, I'm not racist. And I was like, whoa, I didn't say that. You did. Those are your words, friend, not me. Another time I was playing a show in, I want to say Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I saw someone dressed, they too were dressed up as Dennis Rodman. That must be like a common blackface thing, dressing up as Dennis Rodman, or the folks that wear a bunch of bronzer in order to be someone from the 70s, but then they wear like the most obnoxious like sized afro they can find. They happen to bronze their skin. Like, I don't know. It's just some microaggression situation happening, and I'm not a fan of it. And I just highly recommend anyone, if you're listening to this and thinking about it, just, skip the blackface, skip the impressions. I'm nervous to see what will be on my TikTok and Instagram feed for the next 2 weeks. But I would hope that, last year seemed like Halloween light, LITE, in the sense that like we were all in lockdown. There wasn't a ton of options for us to go like party. So I didn't really see too much. But this year, I'm bracing myself for the fact that I might see some stupid stuff. And again, if you are listening, if you are listening to my podcast, you just let me burp in your ear. Additionally, I'm really hoping that you take that into account. We can admire people and admire different cultures and admire certain things from it, but when we appropriate and more specifically mock that's not cool at all. I don't care how cute you think your midriff looks in your Native American, indigenous people inspired outfit. Actually, speaking of, this is not scary. Well, it is scary because it was in a school. Did any of you guys see that video of that math teacher who took the math term SOHCAHTOA? It's like an acronym for maybe the order of operations or something like that. I can't even remember what it's for. But anyway, this lady dresses up in like just the most wretched fake indigenous costume made out of paper, like construction paper. She took construction paper and made like a feather like headdress and like marched around her classroom going, SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. Like, look it up. It is so horrible. And I'm just like, ma'am, were you trying to go viral and lose your job? Because you won. You won that. Like, I was so uncomfortable watching it. I was uncomfortable watching these kids watch this. Y'all, I don't have kids. I want them at some point. I don't know that I'm smart enough to homeschool my kids. So can we all just like get this together before I have spawn, please? Anyway, I don't know. The point is, I just think that like we are all smart enough or have the ability to be smart enough now to where we can have Halloween that's inclusive for everybody. A Halloween that's not dangerous. We can just have like such a great time because Halloween can be the most wonderful time of the year. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I guess Christmas is also the most wonderful time of the year too. I guess, I don't know. My birthday is too. That's a wonderful time of the year for me. Anyway, all right. Thank you so much for listening to today's spooky scare. Wait, what was that? Oh God. Thank you for listening to today's spooky Halloween special, Scary AF. I just hope that you all have a very safe and fun weekend. Remember, we're still in a pandemic. The numbers are going down, but just be smart. On that side of things, be smart in general. If something doesn't feel right, listen to your gut. Trust it. If you feel like you're being pressured to go out and you don't want to and your gut's telling you don't, listen, make the horror movie 2 minutes long by staying home. Like, I don't know. I just feel like Halloween is one of those holidays where like everyone feels like they have to do something. Now, I'll admit, I personally am somebody who feels like I have to do something on Halloween because I actually like the holiday. I actually like going to like a cemetery and like doing all this spooky stuff. But rest assured, like if I just don't feel like doing something, I'm not going to. And I just hope you feel the same. I hope that if you are someone who trick-or-treats, that you get all the treats and very few tricks. I hope that if you get your stomach pumped, that you live to see another day. But that being said, drink responsibly, partake in whatever you partake in responsibly, have fun, and you know, just let the spirit of the weekend move you to have the best time. I'm sorry. I grew up with Homestar Runner. And I always, at least once a year, think about Marzipan's, or I guess it was Homestar Runner's voicemail where Marzipan calls. And she's like, "Ooh, happy Halloween. It's spooky." Yeah, I don't know. There's a special place in my heart for that. But probably not yours. whatever. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will catch y'all next week. Bye.